Welcome to the Woman's Current. Is the Tide Turning? I'm Sylvia Beckerman.
And I'm Molly Wadzeck. Together, we're exploring how women support women across generations, experiences, and perspectives.
From baby boomers to millennials and beyond, we're asking, are we lifting each other up? And how do we keep the tide moving forward?
Each week, we'll dive into real conversations with women who are reshaping the current and reflect on what those stories mean for all of us.
So let's dive in. Let's get started.
This woman deserves to be calling the shots on her own life. Nobody else should be doing that for her. And I just feel this tremendous urge then to write a story about this particular person, or to make sure that other people know that no woman should ever be restrained from living their lives fully and to the extent that they want to live it.
Welcome to the Woman's Current. Is the Tide Turning? I'm Sylvia Beckerman. Normally, I'm joined by my millennial co-host, Molly Wadzeck. Molly can't be with us for this conversation, but she'll be reflecting afterwards. We'll be talking, and she'll add her perspective on what we explore today. My guest, who I have met personally and spoken to several times, is best-selling author Alka Joshi. Her novels, from The Henna Artist and the Jaipur trilogy to her newest, 6 Days in Bombay, center around women who find strength in the face of tradition, constraint, and silence. Whether it's Lakshmi creating her own path, Mira navigating a world where women couldn't be fully seen, or the bonds between women across class and circumstances. Alka's work keeps returning to one question: where do women find support, and what happens when it's missing? It's a thread that runs through all her characters, and it resonates deeply with what we ask here each week. Are women lifting each other up? And how do those currents carry forward today? Let's start the conversation. Welcome, Alka.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. I think that is the nicest introduction I have ever had. That is a lovely introduction.
Well, Alka, I am so thrilled that you said yes to doing this again. And we're doing, as we said, this is a little bit different in what we're aiming for. So I want to start off, the root of your stories, your mother's life. Your first inspiration came from reimagining what your mother's life might have been had she left an arranged marriage. Why do you think you continue to be drawn to women who push against boundaries?
Because I think my mother wasn't the only one whom I observed having been restrained to be all that she could be. I have over time seen so many women, young and older, in all different walks of life, from all different circumstances, and also all different classes, be subjected to sort of a stronghold that maybe the patriarchy created, maybe their own mother created, somebody created that in their lives and said, you cannot be more than this. Whenever I see that, there is something within me that really responds and curls up inside and just says, no, this is not right. This woman deserves to be calling the shots on her own life. Nobody else should be doing that for her. And I just feel this tremendous urge then to write a story about this particular person, or to make sure that other people know that no woman should ever be restrained from living their lives fully and to the extent that they want to live it.
And one of the things I know that you've talked about is the fact that your mother, although she was in an arranged marriage, had a happy marriage, but she made sure that you were treated equally as your brothers.
Yes, absolutely. So when my father would say to my mother, or he would say to me, Alka, go help your mother in the kitchen, my mother would see me standing there really with a hangdog expression because I did not want to be in the kitchen. I was not a domestic kind of girl. I did not want to be cooking for everybody. And she would say, what are you doing here? And I would say, well, dad sent me in. Is there something I can help you with? And she would say, no, you go right back to that dining room table. You go work with your brothers on your homework. You get into a good school. You do what you want to do with your life. You don't have to live in the kitchen like me. And I just remember, my earliest memories are of her making sure that I would know that I could be everything that was being planned for my brothers, that I didn't have to settle for less, and she wasn't going to settle less for me.
And what's amazing is that that's how she was brought up
Yes.
to do, to be in the kitchen, to do. And what strength for your mother to actually turn it around. No, she did not leave an arranged marriage, but she made sure her daughter became the woman that she could become.
Absolutely. And I think that my mother didn't realize what women could be until we came to the United States. I was 9 at the time, my mother was 30. And I think that my mother looked around and saw that American women had agency. She was looking all around and realizing that American women had the opportunity to say, I like this, I don't like that, I want to do this, I don't want to do that. And I think this really surprised her because in India in the 1950s, when she was raised, this was not something that women got a chance to do. Even if they felt it, they weren't allowed to express it. So I think that is when the idea seeded in her that, I've got that one daughter and I could raise her to have a voice like these women have, especially if we're going to stay in America for any length of time. She doesn't have to be imprisoned the way that I think I was. So mom, wanted to go to college. And she was telling me, I was all ready to go to college. I was all ready to do psychology. And my father said, nope, you have to come home. You have to get married to this young man we have found for you. He's perfect. He's ambitious. He's an engineer. Everybody needs an engineer these days in their family. And India is rebuilding herself. And so this will be the perfect partner for you. Now, let me tell you a tiny little secret. My mother and father actually were not well suited for one another. And here is why. Uh, Whenever a couple in India gets married, they have to have an astrological chart done for them. And the astrological chart can only be done by a Brahmin priest. They are the only ones who are trained to do this kind of thing. It's not the astrology, it's not the zodiac chart that everybody sees in Cosmo magazine. It's a very complicated mathematical chart that has to do with where the moon is and where the sun is at any one time and whatever. So it takes them about a day or two to come up with this chart. My mother and father's chart did not match. It was not a good match. But my grandfather, apparently, my dad found out years and decades later that my grandfather was so committed to having my father in the family that he made sure that his son went out and found another Brahmin priest who would say, yes, the charts matched. That is how my parents were married. And I think it's one of the reasons why they fought so often because they really weren't meant to be together. And in her 60s, my mother was brave enough to get a divorce.
That is one heck of a story. I didn't know that. But the funny thing is, you said that women in the 50s in India were supposed to do this, this, and this. Women in the US in the 50s were supposed to do this, this, and this. Get married, move to the suburbs, have children. The
Right.
men were supposed to support the families.
Yeah.
The difference is the arranged marriage.
Yes.
Um, but it's 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 absolutely amazing, and kudos to your mother
Yes.
for doing so much for you.
I this is where I have to give a lot of credit to the soap operas because it was the American soap operas that my mother was watching while we were in school. And she's like, wow, these women are so racy. How do they get away with it? And then, of course, in the late 60s, when we came to the United States, it was Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. Do you remember that?
Oh, of course.
Goldie Hawn dancing in a bikini and so on. And then there was the Love Boat, and there was the Dating Game. All these things were really like blowing my mom's mind, up. My dad was at work, so he wasn't looking at any of this stuff. But my mom is absorbing it all and just thinking, wow, women could have a very different life than the one that I was raised in.
What a story. Okay. We're going to move on a little. This is great. I could do a whole series on this, but we'll move on a little. Your characters across your novels, there's such strength in them. Lakshmi and the henna artist, the woman in the Jaipur trilogy, Mira and Sona in 6 Days in Bombay. We meet women who are resilient, determined, but often isolated.
Mhm.
Your mother watched the soaps, though. Where do you see their strength coming from? And it wasn't the soap opera.
So, for example, let me take 6 Days in Bombay. Mira, the painter, has been raised to in a wealthy family. Her every passion has been indulged, and then when she showed a penchant for painting, her mother took her all around the world to study with real life painters who were well known in their field. Not many of us get a chance to be educated in that way, and so Mira has grown up thinking that she is worth the worry. She is worth the trouble. She is worth the money to be able to do what she really is passionate about. That is where her strength comes from. Additionally, I think that sometimes a woman is just born with this need to stand out and something in her personality that says, I will not take anything lying down. I will not be silenced. And I think that Mira the painter is that woman, so that when people tell her, no, 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 you must believe in this kind of God or that kind of God, once she gets up in school and says, I'm an atheist, by the way, everybody. So stop giving me this all this God stuff. And then when her mother disapproves of the fact that she is painting nudes of women as well as of men, Mira says, well, that's not really for you to say, Mom. I'm the painter, and men have been painting nudes forever. Why wouldn't I be able to do the same thing? And then when her mother says, look, you're scandalizing us by sleeping with both men and women, something that would have been verboten in the 20s and 30s when our heroine is alive. Mira says, oh, okay, so you want me to get married just so we can put an end to all the scandal mongering about me, all the rumors about me. Mom, I don't care about that, but if you care so much about that, I'll go ahead and get married. But I'm going to marry somebody of my choice. I'm marrying my first cousin. And so, in a way, this was a slap to her own mother. Because nobody wanted to marry their first cousin. Who knows what the babies are going to turn out to be? But also, in a way, she was saying, you want me to get married so badly that I will go ahead and make a bad decision on whom to marry. So I think that her Mira's strength really comes from some inner place that she was born with, but also the circumstances in which she is raised with money, with indulgence, and with talent. I think that where Sona, who is the nurse who is taking care of Mira at the hospital when Mira is in trouble and in pain, I think where Sona gets her strength is in knowing that if she does a good job and she remains a responsible person who is taking care of her mother, who is making sure that she is as respectful of her mother as her mother has been of her and her needs, then everything will be fine. I think that her strength just comes from working hard, keeping herself dignified and in a position to be able to, stand up for herself. Of course, she doesn't have quite the strength that Mira does. And so 6 Days in Bombay is really about how Sona gathers the strength to be as strong ultimately as Mira was.
Well, and that's it. You have two different classes of women who actually really bond with one another, and there's that support right there.
Yes.
Your characters often have to navigate, as we're talking, the world without much support, um, or where support comes in unexpected ways, as we're just talking about. What draws you to writing women who are both lifted and limited by the networks around them? And is the absence of support as formative to your characters as the present of it is?
I think that's a very astute observation that I think these characters are as formed by the lack of support as the support itself. Um, I think that in reality, in life, we are often in circumstances where we have no support, and sometimes finding ourselves in circumstances where we have it. And when we have it, we realize how much it can give us, how much it helps shore us up, our confidence, our ability to think for ourselves and make decisions for ourselves. And so it's important for me to show what happens to a woman in both of those circumstances so we can compare and contrast how wonderful a world it would be if all women had support and could be um, could find pillars of strength no matter where they looked in whatever circumstances they were in. It's just so extremely important. I feel so lucky, as I'm sure you do, Sylvia, in the fact that I have found pillars of strength when I was a girl. I found it in my mother for me. Otherwise, I would not be the person who is talking to you here today. Without that mother, I would never have been this person who actually has a voice and has agency. I found the strength in teachers that I had throughout school and throughout college. And then, of course, I found strength when I went into the working world. And every now and then I would end up with a female boss who was exactly the kind of person I needed to take me to the next level. And this is the other thing, too. We need different people at different stages of our lives. We don't react the same to the same kind of person every single time in our lives because we need different things. Sometimes we just need emotional support. Sometimes we need physical support. Sometimes we need this kind of otherworldly sort of support, the one that comes from melding of the minds. And so there are different kinds of support that we get from different women throughout our lives. I I can give a lot of credit to my dad also, because of course, he financed my education, and that education has served me in good stead all these years. And I know that he would have wanted for me what my mother wanted. It's just that it took her to push him in this direction. And I didn't even know that until she told me how hard she had fought for me. At the age of 52 is when she told me that my
Well,
at my age of 52.
my support, well, my model was my mother who got married at 19. By 20, she had me. By 28, she had five children. And this was back in the 50s where you're supposed to get married. And my father had his mindset. He was supposed to support the family. My mother was supposed to take care of the children. My mother never had the opportunity to go to college because growing up, they couldn't, her parents, her mother, who was a single mom, could not afford it. And my father didn't want her doing anything until we were all out of the house, whether it was in school full time or whatever. And so at the age of 42, she went to college. She went to a college, one of the first ones in New York, that gave you credits for life for living. You wrote a thesis, a paper, whatever it's called. And within 8 years, she had a PhD from Columbia.
Oh.
So I could not compete with my mother. I'm not a, I'm a good student, but I don't want to be a student. But it was that I remember there are stories when she was in hospice, women would come in and tell us stories about how they would speak to her and say her name was Anita. Anita, I want to go for this or that. My mother would go, why aren't you? And they'd go, well, I'm 60. And my mother would say, get off the phone now and go do it and don't let anything stop you. And, I had that. And then going through as I basically really for the last 20 years, I'd say, I've made friends of a variety of different ages, different backgrounds, and it's been great because I have come across women who do not support other women who would like to see you, they don't want you in their path. But isn't it great when you realize then you don't need them and you're going to move on anyway? And that's kind of what a lot of your characters are. They have that I would call chutzpah and that strength to move on.
Mhm.
And you know, so we're talking about that. So I'm going to ask you a question
Yeah.
because I can. Why do you think this thread of women's strength and the support or lack of that they receive, you have it running through all your work? We kind of hit on this, but what makes it so essential to you as a writer?
Mm. Well, I would not be a writer without women demonstrating to me that I had the chutzpah to make that happen, even at a late stage in my career. Um, so becoming a full-time author is actually my third or fourth career. And one of the ways in which I kept skipping from one career to another is because I had a female role model who would ask me questions like, are you happy doing what you're doing? Is this where you want to be? Is there another place that would make you happier, or doing another job would make you happier? Are you feeling like you are using all your talents? And I think because I always had a woman sort of pushing me towards, uh, you know, figuring out what would make me the happiest, that really helped me to be where I am today. And today, I feel like I'm actualizing all parts of me. The part of me that is an artist, because now I'm painting with my words. The part of me that is a writer, because now I'm being able to express whatever it is that I think is important in life as a woman, as a wife, as a sister, as a mother to a found family. These are all things that I'm able to express as a writer. And then also, I think as a person out in the world, as a woman who is older, I feel that I am able to be kind of a role model to other women who are older and want to do something different with their lives. And they see me with my gray hair and they think, oh, okay, well, maybe life isn't over for me already.
Life is not over. Now, mind you, the only thing I didn't get from my parents is the gray hair. I
You're
wanted
lucky.
it because then I could have fun with it. You know, if people think I dye my hair to get rid of gray, no, I wouldn't have to dye it as much, but I have fun with it. But that's the thing. There's no expiration date on trying something new. There's no expiration date on meeting new people and going forward. And the support that we find, whether you call it sisterhood, community, whatever you want to give the word to, there's so much of it, and it's so important that sometimes we lose that vision. It gets lost in the weeds. And that's why I want to ask you, when readers, especially women across generations, I know you have readers across generations because
Yes.
I saw them at the book talk you had in New Canaan,
Lots of
Connecticut.
mother-daughter teams, yes.
So when readers tell you what your books mean to them, what do you hear? Do they recognize their own struggles for strength and support within the characters that you create?
Yes, that's also a great way to put it. They do recognize the struggles and they are encouraged by the fact that these women are not allowing obstacles to stop them in their tracks, maybe momentarily stops them in their tracks. And maybe after they have some kind of support coming in through another woman or another person in the book saying, no, I think you can do it. Or if they just are marshaling all their resources and figuring out that they can surmount this obstacle, then I think that my readers just feel like there's hope for me. If this woman with all of her obstacles can do it, then maybe I can too. These characters that I build are as realistic as I can make them, which means that they're not all invincible. There are times when these women fall down. There are times when they are filled with guilt or shame or any of the natural emotions that we all have as women if we let someone down or if we let ourselves down. But then what we need to do, no matter what kind of intensity of this feeling we have, we do have to, and these characters do, figure out a way to get out of that cycle of shame or discouragement or humiliation and come out of it much stronger and be able to say, okay, that was that. It's over. Now I can make a new beginning. And we can all make new beginnings. Don't you think, Sylvia? All the time.
Oh, all the time. All the time. Um, you know, the other thing, what you were talking about just now, and can you give me 1 second? I need to get my power cord. This thing was supposed to last for like 5 hours. I even looked it up.
Sure.
Give me 1 second. I know where it
Yep.
is. Don't go away.
All right.
Fell asleep. Oh my God. It's a good thing it's you. Telling you. Yeah, no one would believe half of this. When I first started out,
Uh-huh.
when I came back and I was going to do Letty,
Uh-huh.
my other computer decided it would die.
Oh, really?
Hang on. Come to me, baby. Don't die. Why do I have to put my glasses on so I can see?
Oh, I know. I have to do this all the time. I try still to try to do things without my glasses. It never works.
Yay. Okay. All right. Well, we'll cut that. It's a good thing I saw the little thing. I don't get it, but I don't get so much. Let's see. I hate these things. All right. And we're back. So we were talking about your readers.
Yeah. And how they do resonate with so many of the characters and how they feel that they see things in those characters and the strategies those characters use to surmount obstacles that they feel they can use themselves. It's always nice to see somebody else going through a hard time, but then working out how they got beyond it and how they were able to actually make a better life for themselves afterwards. This is why we read People magazine. This is why we like feel good stories, because they help us realize that there is hope out there. There are other ways of looking at a problem and seeing how we could solve it. And I think that that is what my readers respond to in my books. It's so rewarding. Sylvia, this is one of the best parts of this job as a full-time author. I love talking to readers. I love meeting them in person. I love this whole idea that they tell me their stories about their grandmothers or their mothers or somebody who was in the hospital and they used one of my books to make themselves feel better. or they went through a terrible cancer diagnosis and treatment, and they used my books to escape into a world that was unlike what they were in. And it just, once again, gave them hope and courage. What a wonderful thing to be able to do. I had no idea that as an author, you get to do this on a regular basis. It's amazing. You can
Right.
affect a lot of people's lives.
Well, people don't most people don't understand that. And I talked to a lot of authors who also did not realize that because they were kind of telling their story, but it wasn't their story. But in building those who can, and you certainly have, the characters and the stories and the research that you do, it's not just wackadoodle, here's a mystery, oh, and the butler's going to whatever. You do immense, intense research.
Yeah.
And so when you have a character like Mirror or Lakshmi,
Mhm.
they're made, yes, they don't truly exist, but they're based on real people.
Right.
And that I think is so powerful that that gets me into women's voices in literature. You said you wanted to write the kinds of stories you didn't see growing up. How do you think literature can be an act of women supporting women?
Oh, I think my earliest memories are reading those books that I think everybody has read, the Little Women series, and then a series of books I used to read with a character named Beanie Malone. I can't even remember the author's name, but they were all about these young women dealing with the very same kinds of things I was dealing with. How do you belong to a group? What do you do when you are being put down for whatever reason because somebody's jealous of you, or they think they're better than you or whatever? And so reading these kinds of stories does give you maybe some strategies or some hope, or lets you know that somebody else was able to get through this really hard time. And then in the 1980s, when the Joy Luck Club came out, that was the first time that I understood that I could write about my culture in the way that Amy Tan had written about the Chinese culture and about what women experienced in that particular culture. Because, yes, we women all have this common thread of sometimes being ignored, treated as second class citizens, maybe not being taken seriously. But there are very specific things that women in certain cultures
Yes.
have to deal with. And when I read Amy Tan's novel, I just thought, oh, wow, this is amazing. She was able to use her culture and bring out all of the things that the women in her culture have to deal with. And there was nothing in my head at that time that thought I might write a novel like that someday about women in my culture. I was not thinking that at all. It was never in my mind. But who knows? Maybe in some recess of my mind, it stayed there. And that is why when I first started writing The Henna Artist, it came out like a gush, of waterfall. I never once had to think about what was going to happen because I had this fully formed idea in my head of these women, what they were doing, how they were doing it. And the story came so easily. I've never even had writer's block because number one, I don't believe in it. But number two, I think that, you know, anything I do is part of writing. So you mentioned research a little bit ago. And what I consider writing is also research. We writers are all nerds. We're all nerds. We all read too much and love the research part of everything that we did in school. And so for me, research is such a pleasure, being able to talk to experts who know a lot about the subject matter I'm writing about, or being able to go visit museums and libraries and, look up tiny little details that I know will only make it in one line in the story, but it's so important for me
Right.
that that detail is correct because believe it or not, readers notice. Readers notice those little details in the way I used to when I was only a reader. And I go, ooh, that sounds authentic. That's a very specific kind of eyeglass that woman is wearing. So it has
It's
to be authentic.
important. It really is important because it brings a certain reality into the story. It helps people being able to, to say, wow, I learned something new, or I did that, and relate. There you go. There's the word I was looking for. And relate to the character, which
Yeah.
is so important. Which brings me to, you've written about resilience and secrecy and survival. How has writing these stories changed the way you see your own life? We talked a little bit about that and your relationship to the women who helped shape you.
One of the things that I think is really key to a lot of these stories and a commonality is their ability to forgive themselves for things that may have appeared to be large transgressions in their lives, but ultimately they realize it was probably an expression of their authentic self that led to that transgression, or maybe the inability to speak up for themselves that led to the transgression, and that really maybe there was nothing negative about it. Even if there was, there is forgiveness that we can all give ourselves. And for me, that has always been such a sticking point in my life. I will dwell over things that I think I might have done that may have, let's say, gone against something my mother asked me to do, or my father asked me to do, or, maybe a betrayal of some kind of a friend or so on. And I will just dwell on that forever. And I will make it into a really big deal in my mind. But seeing my characters, and maybe this is why my characters will forgive themselves ultimately for certain sins, seeing them do that, I think is a way for me to say it wasn't that big of a deal. And we all make those kinds of mistakes, and it's okay. You're not a bad person. You're just a human being because you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to make every decision that is in everybody's best interest. Sometimes you'll only make a decision that's in your best interest. And that's okay too, because you are exercising your right to be a human being.
Yes, most definitely. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you if you could give one message to women today, whether they're 20 or 70 or older, about carrying their stories forward, what would it be?
I think for young women, the best thing for them to do would be to take somebody in their lives, a woman who maybe their mother, their grandmother, their aunt, somebody who is much older and closer to the final years, and ask them about their life. What were they doing when they were 20, when they were 40, when they were 60? What were they feeling? What did menopause feel like for them? What did it feel like when their kids started marrying and forming their own adult lives? What did they really want to do in their life? And what was their dream for their future that either was realized or wasn't realized? There's so much to be learned, I think, from people who are older than us. And since I didn't start questioning my mother until I was in my 50s and she was in her 70s, and same thing with my dad, I question him so much now about his early life. I am learning about them in a way that would have been lost forever had I never talked to them about these things. Once they go, their stories go with them. So for younger women, I would say make friends with your older women, start questioning things about their lives and recording them. Have them write it down, or you should write it down and give it to them as a present or whatever. But I think this would be a really good exercise. And then for older women, I think the idea that their lives were worth it, that whatever they did in their lives and whatever lessons they learned are things that younger people may need to know about, I think they should start writing those down. Or if they're not writers, then maybe an audio recording of some kind. Maybe every day, take 15 minutes or so just to relate a certain thing that happened when they were in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and then, maybe something that they learned from it. These Once we die, our stories die with us. And I think something that I, as an author, really value is that my stories are not going to die with me because I'm putting them all into my characters. I will live forever. So
Oh, there you go. Alka, I love that you go across generations and the communication has to be there. We as women need to fight the fight if it's there. We need to really understand one another. And that's the thing that I think is getting lost in well, there was a movie Lost in Translation, but that's not what it was about. But to me, the lack of real communication, a one-on-one or and really listening to one another, we need to continue that. And so I thank you for your writing. I thank you for this conversation. And before we leave, where can people find out more about you?
They can go to my website, alkajoshi.com. So easy. My name is one of the easiest Indian names you will ever run across because it doesn't go on forever. And of course, you can find me on Instagram at the Alka Joshi, or you can find me on Facebook easily by searching for me. I am just so delighted that you spent the last 45 minutes listening to me, Sylvia. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Again, thank you, Alka, and I'm looking forward to your next book.
Thanks.
Although Molly couldn't be with us for my conversation with Alka Joshi, she did listen. Here are her reflections on our conversation.
What really stood out to me in Alka's work is the quiet strength of her female characters, often pushing forward without much support. As a millennial, I've found that in a lot of ways our generation expects those support systems to already be there and to have been maintained. And sometimes we have to build them ourselves. Actually, most of the times we do. And we have to recognize the work that came before us. Her stories also made me reflect on the silences women navigate, not just the historical ones around marriage or identity, but today's pressure to appear like we're handling it all on our own. The friendship between the women in 6 Days in Bombay really brought that home. Two women from different worlds, connecting with real intentions across time, whether it's the 1920s or today. It all circles back to the same question that we keep thinking about and discussing is, where do women find support? And are we showing up for each other when it truly matters?
That's it for this episode of The Women's Current. Is the Tide Turning?
If this conversation sparks something in you, we want to hear from you. What's this week's current moment? Tell us on Instagram at The Women's Current. Share it with a friend. And don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube.
Join us each week as we explore how women are supporting each other and where do we go from here.
Until next time, I'm Molly Wadzeck.
And I'm Sylvia Beckerman. Thanks for listening. This has been a Life of Prey production.